Hi friends, despite being a faction of half-dead, senile robot people, the Necrons have some very interesting characters. So, today, I'll cover the basics of the most iconic Necron characters, aka the ones important enough to have gotten models. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to watch my Necron faction video for some more background. But, without further ado, let's get right Necron with it and talk about these characters. First off, let's talk about one of the greatest, if not the greatest strategic minds in all of 40k, and perhaps one of the most threatening presence in the entire universe. Imotekh the Stormlord was a legendary general in the War in Heaven, and is dead set, pun intended, on unifying the Necrons and reclaiming the galaxy. The Stormlord reawakened in the modern timeline after a civil war broke out on his tomb world of Mandroga. The Pharaoh of Mandroga had died during the Great Sleep, so the awakened nobles did what most do when an old man dies, and violently fought each other for the Pharaoh's stuff and position. After a bit of a bone bash, one noble had the brilliant idea to wake up Imotekh the Stormlord in order to enlist the legendary Nemesor to his side, and this would have been a great idea. If not for Imotekh thinking that all the surviving nobles were dumb doo-doo heads and decided to take over Mandroga for himself. So, the master strategist formed his own army and easily took over the Tomb World. Once he established his rule, he began his conquest of the galaxy. As I've said before, Imotekh is perhaps the greatest strategist in the entire setting. He coordinates his vast military campaign across many star systems, and he's always 4 million steps ahead of his enemies. He is a being of supreme logic, and he learns exactly how his enemies think. These two in tandem make it almost appear as though he could predict the future, since his plans almost always go exactly how he anticipated. It is said that the Stormlord has never truly lost a war. The only battles he has lost were the ones that were outside of his master plans, or ones that were mere distractions and ploys as per his master plan. Oh, and also against the orcs. Imotekh absolutely hates orcs, even more so than the other lesser species he wants to crush. Remember how he said he's a being of supreme logic? Well, to logic, orcs say, logic? More like, you make me sick with your cringe, metal man. So, the orcs are literally too stupid for Imotekh to comprehend, and they're the only ones who can regularly best him. Also, by power scalar logic, this would mean that the orcs are the greatest strategists in the entire setting, so, typical green W. But, along with Imotekh's immense armies, he also utilizes fear tactics to force his enemies to surrender before any battle has ever begun. The Stormlord knows that the Necron forces are finite and outnumbered by the other races, so, along with his undying legions, he often conjures great storms and releases blood-swarmed nanoscarabs and flayed ones to sow fear into all who oppose him. Also, one funny bit showing how scary Imotekh is that one time he shivered an Imperial Governor's timbers so hard that the dude had a heart attack and literally died just from seeing the Stormlord. They weren't even fighting, he just saw him at dinner and said, "Abracadac, I cast self-heart attack." And if you want to know why Imotekh was at dinner with some random governor, well, stay tuned, we'll get to that later. But finally, the Stormlord's only real weakness is that he's very prideful, and after beating his enemies, he likes to flex on them by teleporting before them and engaging them in a duel. After winning, he doesn't kill his opponents since he thinks it's funnier and more pathetic for them to live with their defeat. However, he does take a little souvenir from those he bested in the form of a severed hand. One notable opponent he bested was High Marshal Helbrecht of the Black Templars. Imotekh was one of the few characters Helbrecht ever lost to in combat, and he was left humiliated. You know, until he decided that losing a hand was actually pretty cool since Daddy Dorn also lost a hand, so the Emperor must have willed it that way. The few other characters who can match Imotekh's tactical genius and martial prowess are the Silent King, Brendan Fraser, and Nemesor Zandrek. Speaking of Zandrek, let's go to him now. Nemesor Zandrek is another one of the greatest generals of the Necron race and works under Imotekh in the Sawtech dynasty. Sawtech dynasty? More like sock on D's nuts, is-t. Now, Nemesor Zandrek is a funny fellow since he's a bit of a schizo. During the Great Sleep, he sustained brain damage and now he believes that he's still a Necron tier rather than the soulless robot man Necron that he really is. In addition to this, he believes that his opponents, be it Imperial, Xeno, Chaos, or whatever else, are all fellow Necron tier rebelling against his rule. This madness makes him essentially a robot space skeleton Don Quixote. Since he believes that he's battling fellow Necron tier, he actually abides by the ancient rules of war and ensures that he's fighting honorably. Unlike his boss Imotekh, he avoids committing space war crimes, doesn't use dishonorable units like death marks and flayed ones, and he tries to capture his enemy leaders and treat them to a feast to celebrate his own victory. And this can lead to some funny moments where Xandrick's royal court is pissed off that he brought a random alien to the dinner table and is treating it like a friend that he beat in a weekend golf match. The governor I mentioned earlier was actually one such opponent that Xandrick invited to a feast. And since Xandrick is an actual crazy insane person, many other Necron lords think he's annoying and want to usurp his position. However, even though Xandrick is an actual crazy insane person, he's also an insanely good strategist. So, defeating him is no easy task, for rival Necrons or other factions. He is brutally efficient in warfare and is one of the greatest threats in the galaxy as Imotech's Nemesaur. For example, this literal madman completely annihilated a third of the Imperial Fist and a crap ton of Catachan in a single battle. And this was after he gave the Imperials an entire month to prepare or retreat as per Necron tier honor code and otherwise hindered himself by said code. In addition to his strategic genius making it hard to overthrow him, he also has his stalwart bodyguard, Farguard Oberyn. Oberyn knows that Xandrick is insane, but he is extremely loyal and he tries his darndest to make sure Xandrick's delusions are appeased and that he fixes any issues they may cause. He executes Xandrick's alien prisoners as well as any rival lords that threaten Xandrick. Oberyn's biggest strengths are his sharp political skills and his skills with sharp pole arms. He is also one of the most skilled duelists of the Necrons, and his combat skills in conjunction with Xandrick's tactical might make them a powerful force. Their friendship is also just very wholesome since Oberyn and Xandrick both think the other one is delusional, but they both try to make sure that the other is happy in their conquests. Speaking of wholesome things, I think that it would be very cool and wholesome if you were to join my epic Patreon. Apparently, a lot of people didn't know that I had a Patreon, so I thought I'd just mention it here if anyone wanted to help support the channel a little bit more. I post some more freeform casual videos from time to time, and I do drawing time lapses, and you also get a cool role in my Discord. The Discord that a lot of people apparently didn't know about either. But anyways, back to the vid. Another interesting tidbit from the Necron book Severed is that Xandrick truly believes that the Necrons still have souls because of his powerful friendship with Oberyn. Their real souls were truly the friends we made along the way. But moving on to another iconic pair, we've got everyone's favorite old men, Trazyn the Infinite and Orikan the Diviner. Unlike other Necron characters, Trazyn and Orikan aren't really known for their combat prowess. In fact, they're kinda nerds. So let's start with Mr. the Infinite. In the ancient times, Trazyn was a chief archivist of the Necron tier, and he awoke from the Great Sleep a little bit early. Instead of the approximately 60 million years that many Necrons were awakening from the sleep, Trazyn awoke after approximately 60 million years. After waking up, Trazyn continued to add to his collection on Solemnes. He goes around the galaxy kidnapping specimens he deems interesting and worthy of preservation, which is basically all the main factions of 40k, and then some wacky aliens here and there. Some notable tidbits are that he steals from fellow dynasties since he doesn't even trust other Necrons to preserve history like he can. And then he also found humanity to be really boring until the Horus Heresy, and after witnessing the drama of the war, he began collecting Space Marines, Guardsmen regiments, and Imperial heroes. He's just like us for real for real. And after gathering his specimens and artifacts, Trazyn often puts them in stasis fields or turns them into hard light holograms and arranges them into dioramas depicting interesting and iconic moments in history. Trazyn is really us, for real for real. The reason that Trazyn obsessively collects things is because he knows that without having a true purpose in life, immortals such as the Necrons would naturally go insane. So he sets out to fill his vast galleries with cool stuff. But gathering artifacts is risky business in a galaxy such as 40k, and Trazyn isn't much of a fighter. I mean, he's still a pretty insano fighter considering he's a Necron lord, but compared to other Necrons, he's not very notable in the art of combat. Luckily for him, though, he has a handy ability to project his consciousness into other Necrons and contort them into his image if he so desires. Or he could just simply leave them as is in order to sneak around and trick people. This unique ability allows Trazyn to gather his artifacts worry-free since if his host body is injured or killed, he can just go back to his true body. In addition, it allows him to do little pranky pranks on his rival Orikan and other folk. Speaking of his little pranky pranks, though, Trazyn is quite cunning, sassy, and a bit of a trickster. He's also a pretty cool dude and actually has a lot of funny moments, even outside of the infinite and the divine. Let me just share this one moment that gets talked about a lot because it's funny and it just shows how cunning Trazyn truly is. In the infinite and the divine, Trazyn's in a little court battle with Orikan, and Orikan is secretly using time travel to cheat the trial. However, Trazyn is so clever that no matter what, Orikan could not win it, even though he had literal actual time travel. Literally peak. I know it gets said a lot, but if you haven't read The Infinite and Divine, you really should. That moment is just a minor spoiler in the beginning, so rest assured, there's a lot more in the novel. But back to Trazyn's special little powers, Trazyn's little mind swap ability is also useful for hiding his identity since he has a reputation for stealing valuable artifacts and kidnapping important figures from Necrons and other species. So he's kind of shunned from society due to his wacky little hobby. Wow, Trazyn really is us. For real, for real. Also, according to Trazyn, he was actually friends with Gilliman. If only we could be alike in that way and not the nerd who no one likes way. But on to his rival Orikan. Orikan the Diviner was the royal astrologer of the Silent King's royal court. He was the greatest astromancer around, being able to accurately predict the future by observing the stars. Which means Orikan is basically a 40k TikTok astrology girl. Except, his powers actually work. But in the ancient times, Orikan was the only Necron tier court member to oppose the Deceiver's offer, and he was forced to undergo the biotransference. They probably should have listened to the one dude who could see the future, but sometimes we all make silly little mistakes that damn our entire species for millennia, so it's okay. Anyways, though, Orikan is one of the best future seers in the setting, and he uses his abilities to defeat his enemies, sell his services to other Necrons, and circumvent things that he deems undesirable. And if Orikan ever gets a prediction wrong, he usually just uses his unique chronomancy powers to go back in time and fix things so that he was right all along. And just like his bestie Trazyn, Orikan is disliked by most other Necrons. Since Orikan's still bitter over being ignored despite being 100% correct, he's quite smug and he mocks his peers no matter how much they outrank him or how likely they are to shoot his face off. Other than just naturally being a bit of a silly fella, Orikan knows that no one would truly try to kill him both because of his excellent divination skills and because of his excellent divination skills. As in, his skills are too valuable for the former example, and for the latter example, he uses his skills to predict people not killing him. Orikan's true goal, however, is to get specific artifacts and arrange the galaxy's events to allow himself to ascend beyond his metal form into a Catan-like being of pure energy. Unlike many other Necrons, he isn't preoccupied with the past, other than being salty that no one listened to him. So, he doesn't really seek to reverse the biotransference, rather, he wants to ascend beyond it. This philosophy of only caring about the future is the main driver of his rivalry with Trazyn, since Orikan doesn't really care about the past unless it serves his own goals, and he also believes Trazyn to be short-sighted. This obviously comes in odds with Trazyn's philosophies of preservation. So basically, they're both little weirdos who no one likes, but unfortunately for them, they have conflicting brands of autism, so they also hate each other. Traveling to the next character, we have Imotekh the Traveler. And with him, we're back to the proper warriors. Imotekh leads a powerful fleet across the stars, reawakening tomb worlds in order to unite the Necrons once more. Unlike most Necrons, Imotekh woke up without even an ounce of robot space dementia, and he had the bonus of awakening locked in with grand purpose. Since the Silent King was gone from the universe, Imotekh took it upon himself to unite the Necron race as they were before the Great Sleep. He is one of the most zealous Necrons, and he works hard to accomplish his ultimate purpose. Also, unlike Imotekh, Imotekh has no malice towards the so-called lesser races, seeing them as mere pests infesting the Necrons' rightful territory, and he tries to avoid military conflict when possible since his forces are relatively small and he doesn't want to risk more of his people being lost. But this doesn't mean he's a slouch in battle. Imotekh has the unique ability to upload his consciousness into enemy machines, so he can turn his foes' weaponry against themselves for the ultimate "why are you hitting yourself" moment as the ship's super heavy Nova cannon does a 180 and blasts itself in its stupid ship face. But beyond this, Anrakir is also a very scary presence on the battlefield, as he is a great warrior with his war scythe and tachyon arrow. The tachyon arrow being especially nutty, as it's said to be able to one-shot titans and fell great mountains. And if all else fails, he also has a legion of his ultra elite immortals called the Prerian Eternals. Next up, we have something a little bit different with this very unique character. We have Illuminor Caesarus. Unlike most other Necrons, Caesarus cares little for glory or conquest, rather, he seeks to fully understand life. And by understanding life, I don't mean the silly hippie nonsense of, oh yes, I'm one with life. No, he believes that he can achieve the pinnacle of the biotransference in order to become a god. And in order to be a god, he must fully understand life, of course. So he hunts down and dissects all sorts of life forms in order to augment himself into the ultimate being. Caesarus is also probably the most monstrous of the Necron characters, as he stalks the battlefields, mercilessly killing and gathering subjects. He heavily augments his destroyer body and uses his findings to create a more optimal form. For example, he modeled his armor off of ambuls, and he uses spider-like ocular arrangements. And, he probably modeled his wee-wee after mine. Am I right, fellas? Also, funny little moment, the Silent King got Caesarus to work with him to reverse the biotransference, even though Caesarus is like the #1 biotransference fanboy, since the Silent King reasoned that Caesarus can never understand life, since, he's not truly living, on account of, being a metal space skeleton. But finally, let's move on to the Silent King. I covered most of his backstory in my previous Necron video, so go check that out. But basically, he's literally the strongest dude in 40k. He made a deal with the Deceiver, led the Necrons in the War in Heaven, enslaved the Catan, initiated the Great Sleep after relinquishing the command protocols, and then he self-exiled himself to explore the universe. In the current times, he returned to 40k to help against the Tyranid menace since they threatened his plan's end species. So, he strives to unite the Necrons, and he hopes to reverse a biotransference since he still feels a bit guilty for that one. In addition, he's also been building Blackstone pylons in the Pariah Nexus in hopes of weakening Chaos for a Necron takeover. However, despite his immense power and influence, the Silent King's ambitions are not without opposition. Notably, Imotekh the Stormlord sees Sazerac as a failure and unworthy of leading the Necrons. Imotekh feels the Silent King both failed in ancient times and is now foolishly trying to reverse the biotransference that made the Necrons the powerful race they are today. Both Imotekh and the Silent King are gathering forces to their side to further their goals and at times have clashed with each other. Some other fun Silent King facts are that he was apparently friends with Sanguinius and sometimes wears a mask of him. It's also hinted that the Silent King has some sort of mind control slash memory erasing slash submission aura due to lingering command protocols. And finally, he has an ultra elite lynch guard that he augmented to be warrior philosophers made of gold and blackstone. Badass. But with that, those are the basics on the most notable Necron characters. Necrons have some of the most powerful and threatening characters in the entire setting, and it's quite interesting how almost all of them have their own agendas that sometimes clash with each other. I think that it's also a good way to explain why the Necrons don't just absolutely stomp the other factions. I also hope that more Necron characters get the Trazyn and Orikan treatment with the Great Book. There are also some other interesting characters that I didn't cover, like Imotekh or other random minor characters, but they don't have a model, so who even cares about them? In the future, I'm also considering doing more in-depth videos for single characters, Necrons or otherwise, so let me know if you think that might be interesting. But anyways, thank you everyone for watching. Let me know your favorite Necron character and why they're your favorite, or let me know some cool moments I might have skipped in this video. Thank you to all the patrons who help support the channel and help me to make cool videos. I really appreciate the support. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and consider sharing to all your petty old robot skeletons. Thanks. This video was hard to record. It was like a non-stop tongue twister. Couldn't there have been at least just like one Necron named Skeleton Frank or something?